right, everybody, welcome back. I'm excited for today's deep dive because we're going to be exploring something brand new in Microsoft Excel.
Ooh, Excel. New stuff in Excel, huh?
Yeah, right?
I like it.
You know, it's not always the most glamorous platform, but this is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah.
So as you might have guessed, it involves DAX data analysis expressions.
I was going to guess that, yeah.
You know, which, as you know, you've heard of it, probably used it in Power BI.
Right.
But it's now available in Excel, which is pretty awesome for those of us who like to, dig into our spreadsheets and find some hidden insights.
Yeah, it's really cool because it kind of opens it up to so many more people to use DAX. It's a really, really powerful tool.
Right. And today we're going to be talking specifically about the last function, which sounds kind of basic when you first hear it, but it's
deceptively powerful.
It is deceptively powerful, and it's a visual calculation tool, which I think is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So it operates within the context of your charts and pivot tables.
Right.
So the last element it identifies can actually change depending on how your data is visualized.
Exactly.
It's just wild.
It's really cool.
Yeah. So let's dive into the syntax here.
Okay.
It's last open parenthesis column, and then a bunch of optional arguments, access blanks, and reset close parenthesis.
Okay.
So that column input, that's the only required one.
Right.
You give it a column of data, and it spits out the last element in that column.
That makes sense.
But then those optional arguments, those are really where the fun begins.
Those are where the power comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's maybe start with axis.
Okay.
What is that all about?
So axis is about which direction last is actually looking at your data to determine the last element.
Okay.
So if you think about like a spreadsheet or a chart, it's got rows and columns, right?
Right.
So you can tell last to either look across the rows to find the last value in a row or down the columns to find the last value in a column. And that can be really important depending on how your data is arranged. Like if you've got something like a pivot table where the order of the rows might not be the same as the order that the data was entered.
Right.
Then that axis becomes really critical.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So axis is all about direction.
Exactly.
Now what about blanks?
Blanks.
Those can be a real pain.
Blanks are the bane of anybody who works with data, right?
Exactly.
You never know what they're going to do.
Yeah, you never know if they're there or not.
Yeah, and the thing is that blanks can really affect the way that last calculates.
Right.
Because if it hits a blank cell, it's like, what do I do now?
Right.
Do I stop? Do I keep going the last value?
We talked about the last one, yeah.
So the blanks argument lets you tell AST how to deal with those blank cells.
Got it.
So you can tell it to ignore them, or you can tell it to treat them as if they were a certain value.
Okay.
Which can be really helpful. Like, let's say you're analyzing sales data, and you want to find the last sale that happened in a particular month. But maybe there were a few days in that month where you didn't have any sales data.
Right.
If you ignore the blanks, last might actually give you the last sale from the previous month.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because it hit a blank cell and said, okay, well, that's the last thing I saw.
Yeah.
But if you tell it to treat the blanks as zeros, then it'll correctly identify the last sale within that month.
Okay, so blanks is all about clarity.
Yes.
Making sure that you're getting the right data.
Exactly, controlling how those blanks are handled.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got axis, we've got blanks. Now let's talk about reset.
Reset. This is the fun one.
This is one that kind of scares me.
This is where it gets a little more advanced,
yeah,
but it's also super powerful.
Right.
So reset basically lets you control the scope of the last calculation.
Okay.
It's like you can tell last when to start over with its calculation.
Got it.
So like imagine you've got a chart that shows sales by region. And then within each region, you've got different product categories.
Right.
If you don't use reset, last will just find the last sale overall.
Across the entire chart.
Across the entire chart.
Okay.
But if you use reset, you can tell it to restart its calculation for each region.
Got it.
So you'll get the last sale for each individual region.
Okay, so it's almost like creating subtotals within your data.
Exactly.
Kind of like that.
It's like grouping and subtotaling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. So it's a really granular level of control.
It is. It's very granular.
That reset gives you...
Yeah.
Okay, well, so for our listeners out there, we've gone through all these arguments. Why should they care about this last function?
Right, because it's not just about finding the last value in a column.
Right.
It's about being able to pinpoint a specific moment in time or a specific data point that has significance.
Yeah.
So like, if you're tracking customer behavior.
Yeah. You might want to know the last action that a customer took before they made a purchase.
Right.
Or the last time they interacted with your website.
That makes sense.
Or if you're analyzing financial data, you might want to see the last stock price before a major market event.
Exactly.
So it's really about being able to target that specific data point.
So it's not just about like looking backward.
Right.
It's about understanding like the context and the significance of that last data point.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a final thought for our listeners here, now that you know how to find the last element in your data,
yeah,
what if you could use that to predict what might come next, T?
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
That's a good one.
So, by analyzing past trends or identifying patterns,
right,
could you actually use that last function to get a glimpse into the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of data analysis, right?
Yeah.
Is to try to understand what's happened in the past so that we can make better decisions about the future. And last can definitely be a valuable tool for that.
So there you have. It all comes back to the seemingly simple function. Last. It's all about thinking creatively and finding those hidden insights within your data.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to experiment.
Right.
Try different things, see what works.
That's the fun of it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the last function.
This was fun.
It was fun. I learned something new today.
Me too.
Awesome. All right. We'll catch you next time.
See ya. Bye.